Welcome back to the office hours. Professor Fia here. Have my founding fathers with me, sitting at my desk today again. And what I want to talk about today is our seminar for last week, or actually earlier this week, I think. Today, some of you may have even had the seminar on Anne Hutchinson. Here's why we read this document. First of all, if you haven't figured this out yet, this is actually the first primary source that we've read in this class. This is an actual trial transcript from Anne Hutchinson's trial, this 17th century woman who was disturbing the peace, had theological difficulties with some of the leaders like John Winthrop of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and is a very, very important woman, I think, in not only the history of New England, but in the history of the United States or American history generally. So you had a chance to dabble in some of this 17th century Puritan language. When you get into that, you may have this problem too when we read Franklin's autobiography. I think the best way to do it is just read through it, try to make sense of as much as you can, and then come to seminar with questions, or email me or Professor Snyder with questions about some of the language that's there. But we're going to dive in, where we did dive in to this text this week in seminar. Now, why Anne Hutchinson? Well, I think Anne Hutchinson's trial transcript and her life gives us a very, very different view of Massachusetts Bay Colony than the one that we've gotten in lecture and reading. If you look at Massachusetts Bay Colony from the perspective of John Winthrop, you see a very different place than you do from the perspective of Anne Hutchinson. So what I want to challenge you to do, and what I want you to draw from that reading, first of all, obviously, the theological differences between the leadership of Massachusetts Bay Colony, led by John Winthrop again, and Anne Hutchinson. Understand this concept of antinomianism. The Hutchinson trial is often referred to as the antinomian controversy. What does that mean? Go back and look at your notes, because we covered that in seminar. What did it mean when Anne Hutchinson accused the Puritans of believing in a covenant of works? Right? What is a covenant of works, and how might that be somewhat offensive to the people of the Puritan leadership? And what did Anne Hutchinson mean by a covenant of works? Think about as well her view on Revelation. Right? Anne Hutchinson at the end of that document claims to have received an inner voice that tells her that she's right and her theological beliefs are right. Interestingly enough, later on she's going to become a Quaker, a religion that really centers around the idea of the inner voice or the inner light. Think about that in relation to the very Bible-centered understanding, Bible alone-centered understanding of Revelation that the Puritans have. Now, another big thing that I'm sure came out in seminars, it came out in mine, I'm sure, is the gender question, right? Anne Hutchinson is a woman. And what does her status or her identity as a female have to do with why she's on trial? And if you're in my seminar, and I know Professor Snyder has done this, we looked through the text and found references to Anne Hutchinson described almost like a Jezebel figure in the Bible, or as a seducer, or someone who's acting in a way that's unfitting or unbecoming of her sex. So I think there's a lot of gender issues at work here. Anne Hutchinson is a woman in a largely patriarchal society, and you should be able to prove that or make an argument from that based upon your reading of the text. Finally, think of Anne Hutchinson in light of some of the other reading you've been doing. I think it's in chapter 3 of Oaks, right? As just a general dissenter, someone who opposes Puritan orthodoxy. Think of her alongside people like Roger Williams, who you read about, or maybe even some of the Quakers who lived in New England that were persecuted. If you violated the standard orthodoxy of the Puritans, there's a good chance you were going to be kicked out of the colony. And that's what happened with Hutchinson and Williams. They both went on to move to Rhode Island. Hutchinson later moved to Long Island. So look at them as sort of this group of dissenters, or people in opposition, or hold views that oppose the dominant way of thinking in Puritan New England. Those are some of the points I think you should take away from our discussion of Anne Hutchinson. Again, our first primary document, and just some encouragement if you're watching this. Next week we do Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. Do not do not just pick that thing up the night before and read it, because you'll be required to read the whole book. And we'll talk more about that in lecture. So thanks again for watching the office hours. I hope they're informative, and we'll see you next time.